Lieutenant Sarah Miller stepped off the transport plane and looked around the naval base that would soon become her home. The smell of salt from the sea mixed with the oil and steel of ships anchored nearby. It was early morning, and the sun was just starting to rise above the horizon, painting the water gold. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her uniform and the even heavier weight of what she was about to face. Sarah was not just another recruit. She was one of the first women to join the Navy SEAL training program, something that had been closed to women for decades. Every step she took on that base was history in the making. But that didn't make it any easier. She knew what people were thinking before they even said it. She won't last. As she walked toward the main office, she could feel the eyes of other soldiers on her. Some looked curious, others skeptical. A few even smirked. But Sarah kept her head high. She had trained for years for this. Long nights of running, swimming, and pushing her limits while others gave up. She had fought for her place, and she wasn't going to let anyone push her out. Commander James Lawson watched her from his office window. He was a tall, broad-shouldered man with years of experience in combat and leadership. He had seen many recruits come and go. Strong men who thought they could handle the pressure but broke after the first week. When he first read Sarah's file, he didn't say much. He wasn't sure if she would make it either. But something in her record caught his attention. Never quit. That line had shown up again and again in her evaluations. When Sarah entered his office, she saluted sharply. "Lieutenant Sarah Miller. Reporting for duty, sir." The commander nodded slowly. "At ease, Lieutenant. You know this won't be easy. You'll be tested harder than you've ever been before. No exceptions." "Yes, sir," she said, her voice steady. He studied her for a moment longer, then gave a small nod. "Good. I don't give special treatment here, but I also don't tolerate disrespect. You'll have to earn their respect, the same way everyone else does." Sarah understood exactly what he meant. She wasn't looking for sympathy. She wanted a fair chance to prove herself. When she walked into the training yard, the rest of the team was already there. A group of tough, battle-tested men, each one trained to survive the impossible. They looked at her like she didn't belong. One of them whispered something to another, and they both laughed quietly. Sarah ignored it. Chief Petty Officer Mark Turner, the senior instructor, blew his whistle and barked out, "Listen up! We've got a new face joining us. Lieutenant Sarah Miller. You've probably heard the news already. Don't expect me to treat her any different. She'll do everything you do. Same weight, same distance, same time." A few of the men nodded approvingly. Others still looked doubtful. The training began immediately. The first task was a 3-mile run in full gear under the burning sun. The sand made every step feel heavier. Sweat rolled down Sarah's face, but she refused to slow down. Some of the men started to breathe hard halfway through, but she kept her pace steady. She wasn't trying to beat anyone, just to prove she belonged. By the end of the run, she crossed the finish line in the middle of the group. Not first, but far from last. A few of the men looked at her differently after that. Turner didn't say anything, but he gave a short nod, a small sign of respect. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Sarah sat alone on the dock, her legs aching, her muscles screaming. The waves lapped softly against the shore. She took off her cap and let the cool breeze hit her face. For a moment, she allowed herself to breathe, to feel proud of surviving her first day. Commander Lawson happened to pass by and saw her sitting there. He didn't say anything at first. Then he spoke quietly. "Good work today." "Thank you, sir," she said, surprised that he had noticed. He nodded again. "You've got a long road ahead, but something tells me you'll make it." Sarah smiled slightly. "I plan to, sir." As he walked away, she stared out at the endless stretch of water, the sound of distant ships echoing through the night. She knew tomorrow would be harder. She knew there would be people waiting for her to fail. But she also knew that quitting wasn't an option. That night, as she lay in her bunk, she thought about everything she had been through to get here. The early mornings, the bruises, the endless drills. She remembered the people who told her she couldn't do it, and the few who believed she could. Her heart was pounding, not from fear, but from determination. She whispered to herself, "One day at a time, one challenge at a time." Outside, the base was quiet, the only sound being the distant hum of the ocean. Tomorrow, she would rise before dawn, ready to fight again, for respect, for equality, and for herself. And though no one knew it yet, Sarah Miller was about to change more than just her own life. She was about to change the Navy SEALs forever. The sun rose slowly over the naval base, casting a golden light on the training field. Sarah Miller stood in line with the other SEAL trainees, her uniform soaked with the early morning mist. It was her second week of training, and she had already learned one important thing. It wasn't just the hard drills she had to fight through. It was the people. When she had first arrived, many of the men had looked at her with curiosity. But now, that curiosity had turned into open judgment. They whispered behind her back, cracked jokes during meals, and doubted every move she made. To them, she wasn't just a new trainee. She was a woman trying to break into their world. Chief Petty Officer Mark Turner, one of the toughest instructors in the unit, had never hidden his doubts. He had spent years in combat zones, leading men through the harshest conditions. To him, being a Navy SEAL meant strength, discipline, and endurance. And though he respected rules, he didn't believe a woman could meet the same standard. He watched Sarah with a sharp eye every day, waiting for the moment she would fail. That morning's drill was brutal. The team had to carry a heavy log together through sand and water, shouting in rhythm to keep each other in sync. The log weighed nearly 200 pounds, and it dug into their shoulders like a knife. Sweat dripped into their eyes, their boots filled with wet sand, and every step felt heavier than the last. "Keep up, Miller!" someone shouted from the back. "I am keeping up," she shouted back, her teeth clenched as the weight of the log pressed down on her. A few of the men laughed, but not kindly. Turner walked alongside the team with his arms folded. "You want to be one of them?" he said to Sarah. "Then stop sounding like you need help. You either keep up or get out." She didn't answer. She just focused on her breathing, counting each step in her head. The log felt heavier with every minute, but she refused to let it crush her spirit. She pushed harder, ignoring the burning pain in her shoulders. An hour later, when the drill ended, most of the team dropped the log to the ground with groans of exhaustion. Sarah stayed standing, breathing hard but steady. Some of the men glanced at her, surprised. She hadn't been the slowest. She hadn't asked for help. She had made it, but not everyone was impressed. In the mess hall later, she heard two trainees talking at a nearby table. "She's only making it this far because they're going easy on her," one said. "Yeah," the other replied. "This isn't a charity program. She won't last a month." Sarah stared down at her food. She had faced comments like these before, long before she joined the SEALs. She had grown up proving herself in every room she entered. She wasn't about to let a couple of bitter voices shake her now. A few tables away, Commander Lawson overheard the comments too. He didn't say anything, but his sharp eyes followed Sarah. He noticed how she didn't react. She just ate quietly, kept her posture straight, and walked out with her head high. The next day, the team had an ocean swim test, a 10-mile endurance swim with full gear. The water was icy cold, and the waves were strong. Many trainees hated this drill. It separated the strong from the weak fast. When the whistle blew, everyone dove into the water. Sarah's muscles tightened from the shock of the cold, but she forced herself to keep moving. Stroke after stroke, she matched the rhythm of the team. Halfway through, the current grew stronger. A couple of trainees slowed down, gasping. Sarah kept going. She thought of every long night she had trained alone. Every time she had told herself that pain was temporary. Her arms burned, her legs ached, but her mind was louder than the pain. By the end of the swim, she pulled herself out of the water, coughing and shivering. She wasn't first, but she wasn't last either. Turner glanced at his stopwatch, then at her. For the first time, he didn't say anything sarcastic. As the days passed, Sarah kept proving herself in small ways. She ran every mile, carried every weight, and never asked for mercy. Some of the men still whispered, but a few began to respect her silently. They didn't say it out loud, but they noticed how she never quit. One evening, after another exhausting day of drills, Sarah was alone in the gym, doing extra push-ups. Turner walked in. He stood at the doorway for a moment, arms crossed. "You think extra push-ups are going to make them like you?" he asked. Sarah didn't stop. She kept counting softly under her breath. "I don't need them to like me, Chief. I just need to earn my place." He didn't reply immediately. For a moment, something in his eyes softened, just a little. "Keep that attitude," he finally said, "because they won't give it to you." "I don't want it given," she answered. Turner left the room without another word. But for the first time, he didn't look at her like she didn't belong. Later that night, Sarah lay in bed, sore but proud. She knew this was just the beginning. Winning their respect wasn't going to happen in a day. It would take sweat, pain, and a lot of silent victories. But she also knew one thing for sure. She was stronger than their doubt. And slowly, day by day, they were starting to realize it too. The sun was blazing over the Pacific training base as the team gathered near the helicopter pad. The mission briefing had just ended, and everyone looked serious. Today wasn't an ordinary training day. It was a full-scale simulated rescue operation, one that would test every skill they had learned so far. Commander Lawson stood at the front, explaining the plan. "This mission will test your teamwork, communication, and endurance," he said firmly. "Treat it like the real thing. Lives depend on it, even if it's only a drill." Sarah Miller stood quietly among the others, listening carefully. Her heart was steady, but inside, she felt the familiar rush of determination. This was the kind of challenge she had been waiting for, a chance to prove herself not just as a trainee, but as a SEAL. The mission was simple on paper but brutal in practice. The team had to locate a hostage hidden on a small island a few miles away, navigate through rough terrain, and extract the target safely before sunset. Every second would be monitored, and every mistake would be recorded. Chief Turner led the team as usual. He didn't say much to Sarah that morning, but his cold glances said enough. He still didn't trust her. The helicopter blades roared as the team lifted off. Sarah sat near the open door, wind whipping her hair under her helmet. She stared out at the endless blue ocean, reminding herself of her training. Stay calm, stay sharp, stay focused. When they reached the island, the team jumped into knee-deep water and sprinted toward the dense jungle. The air was thick and humid. They moved in formation, rifles up, scanning the trees. Sarah kept her position near the back, watching the others, keeping pace. Hours passed as they moved through mud, rocks, and thick vines. Sweat ran down everyone's faces. Communication was key, and this was where small mistakes began to show. One of the men misread a direction and led them slightly off track. Turner grew frustrated, barking orders. "Focus, people. We're losing time," he shouted. Sarah checked her map, realizing the team was moving toward the wrong coordinates. She hesitated, then spoke up. "Sir, I think we're off by about 2 clicks east. The marker was behind that ridge." Turner turned sharply. "Are you questioning my navigation now?" "No, sir," Sarah said calmly. "Just suggesting." The signal from the drone feed showed the marker closer to the coastline. Turner glared at her for a moment, then checked his GPS. To his surprise, she was right. He didn't thank her, but the team quietly shifted direction. By the time they reached the right area, everyone was exhausted. The hostage, a dummy with a tracking chip, was hidden in a cave near the cliffs. The team had to descend using ropes and extract it without triggering fake mines planted along the path. Sarah volunteered to go first. Turner didn't object, though he looked unsure. She gripped the rope and started down carefully, her boots finding steady footing on the rocky surface. The waves crashed below, spraying mist into her face. Step by step, she moved lower, steady and controlled. Suddenly, her radio crackled. "Careful, Miller. Sensors on your left." Turner's voice came through. "I see them," she replied. When she reached the cave, she spotted the dummy and began to secure it. But as she turned, she noticed her equipment had started to fail. Her harness strap had loosened slightly. The clip holding her rope wasn't locking properly. "Sir, my strap's damaged," she reported. "Hold position," Turner said quickly. "We're sending another rope." But the seconds felt like hours. The wind was strong, and the rocks were slippery. Sarah's hand slipped for a moment, and the dummy almost fell. She grabbed it tightly, her heart pounding. The rope creaked under the tension. Come on, she whispered to herself. Finally, the backup rope came down. She secured the dummy again and began the climb back up. Her arms were shaking, but she didn't stop. When she reached the top, her teammates pulled her up, and she rolled onto the ground, breathing hard. The mission wasn't over yet. They had to transport the dummy across the beach to the extraction point. That's when the real trouble began. A sudden blast echoed. A simulated mine had gone off. Sand flew into the air. The team froze. Turner cursed under his breath. Who stepped on it? Turner was furious. We're done. Mission failed. But Sarah looked at the timer. They still had 5 minutes. We can still make it if we move along the east side, she said. Turner hesitated. His instincts told him it was risky. But Commander Lawson's helicopter was already circling above, waiting for them. Fine, Turner said finally. You lead, Miller. Sarah nodded and sprinted forward, signaling the others to follow. They ran through the sand, the sound of gunfire simulations and explosions echoing around them. Her legs burned, her lungs screamed, but she kept going. At the last second, they reached the extraction zone. When the final whistle blew, everyone collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. The mission was over. Later that evening, during the debriefing, Commander Lawson reviewed the footage. Good job overall, he said, scanning the room. However, I saw a moment of breakdown in communication. His eyes fell on Turner. Chief, you nearly lost your team because of a missed signal. Turner clenched his jaw. Understood, sir. Then Lawson looked at Sarah. Lieutenant Miller, your quick thinking saved the operation from a complete failure. Well done. Sarah nodded respectfully. Thank you, sir. But Turner didn't look pleased. As everyone left the room, he stopped her near the door. His voice was low but sharp. Don't get comfortable, Lieutenant, he said. One lucky call doesn't make you a SEAL. Sarah met his gaze, calm and unshaken. Then I guess I'll just have to keep proving it. Turner walked away, but his words stuck in her mind. She knew he would be harder on her from now on. What she didn't know was that this was only the beginning. The real test of respect was still coming. The next morning, the base felt heavy with tension. The air was thick and quiet, as if everyone could feel something coming. Sarah Miller walked into the training hall, her boots echoing softly against the floor. The mission from the previous day was still fresh in her mind. She had done well, even Commander Lawson had praised her, but she knew not everyone felt the same way, especially Chief Turner. Turner's eyes followed her as she entered. He stood near the front of the room, arms crossed, face unreadable. Around them, the other SEAL trainees were gathering for the debrief. The air buzzed with quiet chatter. Some of the men glanced at Sarah, then looked away quickly. They had seen what happened yesterday. Some respected her more now. Others, like Turner, saw it as a challenge to their pride. Commander Lawson stepped into the room, holding his usual clipboard. Good morning, he began. Yesterday's mission had mixed results. There were mistakes, but also moments of strong leadership. His eyes moved briefly to Sarah before continuing. Today's debrief is about honesty. I expect every team member to take responsibility for what went wrong. For a moment, the room was silent. Then Turner stepped forward. With respect, Commander, he said. The mission went off track because some members didn't follow orders. Sarah felt the weight of his words. He didn't say her name, but everyone knew who he meant. Lawson raised an eyebrow. Are you saying Lieutenant Miller disobeyed instructions? Turner shrugged slightly. She acted on her own initiative, sir. And while it worked out this time, that kind of behavior can get people killed in a real mission. The room went silent again. Sarah stood still, her hands tight at her sides. She could feel the eyes of the entire team on her. She took a breath. "Permission to speak, sir?" Lawson nodded. "With respect, sir," she said clearly. "I didn't act alone. I made a call when the GPS failed, and we were running out of time. It was either that or fail the mission completely." Turner's voice was sharp. "And if your plan had gone wrong, we could have lost half the team." Sarah met his eyes. But it didn't go wrong. The air between them felt like a wire pulled tight. The other trainees shifted uncomfortably, watching as the two stood face to face. Lawson finally stepped in. "Enough. This isn't a courtroom. Mistakes were made, but the mission was completed. Let's move forward." He dismissed the room, but Turner didn't move. His expression was cold, his pride wounded. When everyone else left, he turned towards Sarah. "Lieutenant," he said quietly, "stay behind." Sarah froze for a second, then nodded. The others filed out, leaving just the two of them in the empty debriefing room. The sound of the closing door echoed through the silence. Turner stood by the table, his jaw clenched. "You think you've proved something, don't you?" he said finally. Sarah looked confused. "Sir, I only did my job." He stepped closer. "Your job is to follow orders, not to make me look like a fool in front of my team and the commander." "That wasn't my intention, sir," she said calmly, though her heart was pounding. Turner stared at her for a long moment, then said something that shocked everyone who later heard about it. His voice was low but filled with anger. "If you can't respect the chain of command, maybe you don't deserve to wear that uniform." He pointed toward her chest. "Take it off." The room fell silent. Sarah froze. She couldn't believe what she had just heard. "Sir?" she said quietly, hoping she had misunderstood. "You heard me," he snapped. "Remove your uniform. You don't belong in it." Sarah's eyes stung, but she didn't let the tears fall. Around her, the walls felt like they were closing in. She looked at him, at the man who was supposed to lead with honor, and saw only pride and bitterness. Slowly, she reached for her jacket. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. "If this is what it takes to prove I belong, then fine." At that exact moment, the door opened. Commander Lawson had returned, having forgotten his clipboard. He stopped at the sight of what was happening. Turner froze. Sarah stood there with her hands on her jacket, her face pale but strong. "What's going on here?" Lawson's voice was calm, but the sharpness in his tone made both of them straighten immediately. Turner opened his mouth. "Sir, I was—" Lawson cut him off. "I heard enough." His eyes turned toward Sarah, then back to Turner. "You told her to remove her uniform?" Turner hesitated, realizing how it sounded now. "Sir, I was making a point." But Lawson didn't let him finish. He slowly removed his cap and held it over his chest. His voice dropped, quiet but powerful. "Lieutenant Miller, you will not remove your uniform," he said firmly. Then he looked straight at Turner. "Because she's earned the right to wear it. More than most." Sarah stood frozen in disbelief. Lawson's gesture, that simple, silent salute, said more than any speech could. The entire room felt heavy with meaning. Turner's face turned red with shame. He didn't say another word. Lawson turned toward Sarah. "You'll report to my office tomorrow morning," he said softly. "You've done well, Lieutenant." She nodded, her throat tight with emotion. "Thank you, sir." As Lawson left the room, the silence lingered. Turner stood there, staring at the floor, the weight of his mistake sinking in. Sarah slowly buttoned her jacket again, her hands steady now. That night, as she sat by the dock looking out at the sea, she thought about what had happened. She hadn't planned to challenge anyone. She hadn't wanted a scene, but something inside her told her she had done the right thing. She had stood her ground with respect, with courage, and with dignity. For the first time since joining the base, she felt truly seen. Not just as the woman trying to be a SEAL, but as a soldier who belonged. The commander's silent salute had said it all. The base was quieter than usual the next morning. The story about what had happened in the debriefing room spread fast. Even though no one was supposed to talk about it, everyone had heard some version of the same rumor, that Chief Turner had crossed the line and that Commander Lawson had stood up for Lieutenant Sarah Miller in front of everyone. When Sarah walked into the mess hall, conversations hushed for a moment. Some of the men nodded respectfully, others avoided her gaze. It was strange. For the first time, no one laughed or whispered when she passed by. She didn't need to prove anything that morning. Her actions, and the commander's silent salute, had already spoken for her. Still, she didn't feel proud or victorious. She just felt heavy inside. She had joined the SEALs to earn respect through hard work, not through drama or confrontation. But what happened yesterday had changed everything, not only for her but for the whole team. Later that day, she received a message to report to Commander Lawson's office. As she walked through the hall, she could feel eyes following her again. But this time, there was no mockery in them. There was curiosity, even admiration. When she entered Lawson's office, he was sitting at his desk, looking through some reports. Without looking up, he said, "Close the door, Lieutenant." She did. He finally looked up and gestured for her to sit. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "I'm fine, sir," she replied softly. He gave her a long, searching look. "I know what happened yesterday was not easy, but I also know you handled it with respect and discipline." Sarah nodded. "I didn't want to cause trouble, sir. I just didn't want to be disrespected like that." Lawson leaned back in his chair. "You didn't cause trouble, Lieutenant. You reminded this base what real respect looks like." Turner forgot that. She stayed silent for a moment. "What will happen to him, sir?" "That's not your concern," Lawson said calmly. "I've already spoken to the higher command. He'll be disciplined. But between us," he paused and sighed, "he's a good soldier who let his pride get the better of him. I won't end his career over one mistake." Sarah nodded slowly. "Understood, sir." Lawson smiled faintly. "You've got a good head on your shoulders, Miller. I can see now why you were chosen for this program." She felt a small warmth inside. Coming from him, that meant everything. After she left the office, she went straight to the training yard. It was time for physical drills again, and she wanted to focus her mind. When she arrived, the other trainees were already stretching. Turner wasn't there. Another instructor had taken over temporarily. The training that day was rough. Long-distance runs, obstacle courses, and underwater endurance tests. Sarah pushed herself hard, refusing to slow down even when her legs felt like they were on fire. Every breath she took reminded her why she was here, not to prove Turner wrong, but to prove to herself that she belonged. After hours of training, when the session finally ended, Sarah sat down on a bench, exhausted but content. One of the younger trainees, a tall man named Jenkins, approached her. He hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Hey, Lieutenant," he said quietly. "I just wanted to say, what you did yesterday took guts. Not many people would have stood their ground like that." Sarah looked at him and smiled a little. "Thanks, Jenkins. But it wasn't about standing my ground. It was about doing what's right." He nodded, looking thoughtful. "Still, it made a difference. People are starting to see things differently around here." That evening, as the sun set over the water, Sarah walked by the dock again, the same spot she had sat on during her first week. The waves shimmered with orange light, and the base seemed peaceful. She took off her cap and held it in her hands, thinking about everything that had happened. A familiar voice spoke behind her. "Mind if I sit?" She turned and saw Commander Lawson. He sat down beside her, watching the waves. For a few moments, they didn't say anything. The silence was calm, not awkward. "You handled yourself well," he said finally. "Thank you, sir," she replied. "I just wish it hadn't come to that." "I know," Lawson said, nodding. "But sometimes moments like that are what change people. That salute wasn't for you alone, Lieutenant. It was for every soldier here to remember what honor really means." Sarah looked out at the horizon. "I didn't realize it would affect everyone like that." "It did," Lawson said simply. "The men are talking. Some of them are questioning their own behavior, how they treat each other, how they judge people before knowing them. You've done more for this unit in one day than some do in years." She didn't know what to say to that. She just smiled quietly and whispered, I'm just doing my duty, sir. Lawson chuckled softly. Keep doing it that way, Miller. The Navy needs more soldiers like you. They sat there for a while longer, watching the waves crash against the dock. The air was cool, and the stars were starting to appear one by one. For the first time since she arrived at the base, Sarah felt truly at peace. The next day, Turner returned. He didn't speak much, and he avoided looking at her at first. But during training, something unexpected happened. At the end of the day's drills, Turner approached her in front of the team. Everyone went quiet. He stopped a few feet away, his voice calm but low. "Lieutenant Miller," he said, "I owe you an apology. I was wrong." Sarah blinked, surprised. Turner continued, "You've shown more discipline and courage than most people here. I let my pride get in the way of seeing that." The whole team watched in silence. Sarah straightened her posture. "Thank you, sir," she said respectfully. "I appreciate that." Turner gave a small nod. Then, in a gesture no one expected, he reached up and adjusted his hat, the same way the commander had done before saluting her in silence. It wasn't an official salute, but everyone understood what it meant. For the first time, Sarah saw respect in his eyes. Not forced, not out of duty, but genuine. As the sun set behind them, Sarah felt something shift deep inside. The battles she had fought, the long runs, the pain, the loneliness, the whispers. All of it had led to this moment. She had finally earned what she came for. Not approval, not pity, respect. And this time, no one could take it away from her. The days following the confrontation were different on the base. Something had changed, not just for Sarah, but for everyone. The quiet tension that once followed her everywhere was gone. Now, when she walked through the halls or the training yard, people greeted her with respect. There were still challenges ahead, but she could feel the difference in how the team looked at her. Even Chief Turner, who once doubted her every move, treated her with a calm professionalism. He no longer spoke with anger in his voice. Instead, he gave orders the same way he did to everyone else. It wasn't friendship, not yet, but it was progress. Commander Lawson was true to his word. After the incident, he implemented new training rules, not softer rules but fairer ones. He made it clear that every soldier, man or woman, would be treated with equal respect and held to the same standards. He gathered the team one morning and said firmly, "A SEAL is measured by courage and commitment, not by gender, background, or pride. That's the only rule that matters here." The team nodded. Turner stood at the side, silent, his expression thoughtful. Sarah listened carefully, feeling proud but also humbled. She hadn't meant to cause such a change, but now that it was happening, she wanted to live up to it. She wanted to make sure no one ever questioned again whether she deserved to be there. Over the next few weeks, the training grew even more intense. Commander Lawson pushed everyone harder, wanting to rebuild the unit's unity. The exercises were long and exhausting: underwater endurance, heavy load marches, night drills in the freezing ocean. But this time, the team moved as one. During one of the night drills, the group had to swim 2 miles across open water while carrying a raft loaded with gear. The water was black, cold, and unpredictable. Every wave felt like a punch. The current was strong, and the sky offered no light. Turner was at the front, leading the pace, while Sarah and 3 others held the sides of the raft. Every muscle in her body screamed in pain, but she kept going. The ocean had no mercy, and neither did the training. Halfway through, one of the younger trainees started to fall behind. His breathing became uneven, and his strokes slowed. I can't do it," he gasped. Without thinking, Sarah turned back. "Grab the side of the raft," she shouted over the sound of crashing waves. "I'll slow you down," he yelled. "Not an option," she said firmly. "We finish together." Turner noticed what was happening and swam closer. For a moment, he looked like he was about to say something, but then he simply nodded. Together, they helped the struggling trainee back to the formation, and the team kept moving. When they finally reached the shore, everyone collapsed onto the sand, gasping for air. Turner walked over to Sarah, dripping wet and exhausted. He gave her a long look and then said, "Good call, Lieutenant." She looked up at him, surprised. Thank you, sir. He nodded once before turning away. It wasn't a big moment, but for Sarah, it meant more than words could say. The next morning, during breakfast, the base buzzed with quiet talk. Commander Lawson had been watching everything closely, and word spread that he was planning something. A new evaluation system that would promote fairness and teamwork above all else. Later that day, the entire unit was called into the meeting hall. Lawson stood in front of them, his voice strong as always. Over the last few months, I've seen a lot of changes, not just in performance but in attitude. That's what makes a real team. Respect isn't given through rank. It's earned through actions. He paused and looked around the room. Some of you have learned that the hard way, he said, his eyes briefly meeting Turner's. And some have reminded us of what leadership truly looks like. His gaze then shifted to Sarah. Lieutenant Miller, you've shown this unit what integrity under pressure means. You didn't demand respect. You earned it. The room stayed silent for a moment. Then a few soldiers began to clap. It wasn't loud at first, but it spread quickly. Even Turner joined in, clapping slowly but sincerely. Sarah's face grew warm, but she stood tall and nodded. Thank you, sir, she said quietly. After the meeting, Lawson called Turner into his office. No one knew exactly what was said, but when Turner came out, his face was thoughtful, not angry. He walked straight to Sarah, who was cleaning her gear near the lockers. Miller, he said. She looked up. Yes, sir. He hesitated for a moment, then said, You've changed this place. I may not have seen it before, but you've earned my respect. Don't lose that fire. She smiled faintly. Wouldn't dream of it. Turner nodded once and walked away. It was simple, but it meant everything. That evening, Sarah went for a run by the beach. The wind was cool, and the waves crashed beside her rhythmically. The sky turned orange, then pink, then deep blue. She thought about how far she had come. From the day she stepped off the plane, nervous but determined, to now, when even her toughest critic had finally accepted her. She stopped running and looked out over the darkening sea. The water glittered under the moonlight, endless and powerful. Somewhere behind her, she heard footsteps approaching. It was Commander Lawson. Still out here? He asked with a small smile. Couldn't sleep, she admitted. Too much on my mind. He nodded. You've earned a good night's rest, Lieutenant. But I know how it is. When you care about something, it's hard to shut your mind off. Sarah smiled. It's just a lot has changed. I'm glad things are better now. They're better because of you, Lawson said simply. You didn't just prove yourself. You reminded all of us what true leadership looks like. Sarah didn't know what to say, so she just nodded. They stood there for a while, side by side, watching the waves. The base lights glowed behind them, and somewhere in the distance, a bugle played softly. The world felt calm again, at least for tonight. Sarah finally felt at peace, not because she had been praised, but because she knew she had done something that mattered. She hadn't just survived the SEAL training, she had changed it. The next chapter of her journey was waiting, but for now, she let the sound of the sea remind her that respect, once earned, never fades. A few weeks later, life on the base had settled into a steady rhythm again. The early mornings, the tough drills, the long nights of planning, everything was back to normal. But inside the team, something had quietly transformed. They were no longer divided. There was mutual respect, real teamwork, and silent understanding among everyone. Sarah Miller had earned her place not just through effort, but through heart. One morning, the entire unit was called to the training yard earlier than usual. The air was cold, and fog hung low over the ground. Everyone lined up, still half awake, wondering what was going on. Commander Lawson stood in front of them, looking serious but calm. We have a new mission, he said, holding a folder in his hand. A rescue operation off the coast. A small research vessel has gone missing near rough waters, possibly captured by smugglers. Our job is to locate and extract the team safely. It's real, not a drill. The group straightened immediately. Real missions were always dangerous, but they were also what every SEAL trained for. Lawson's eyes scanned the line. We'll be working in pairs. Each of you knows your strengths. I've already assigned partners. When he read the list, Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. Turner and Miller, you're together. There was a murmur through the group. A few glanced at each other but quickly looked away. Turner didn't react. He simply nodded, accepting the decision. Sarah took a deep breath. It was time to prove that everything they had been through, all the tension, all the lessons, had built something real. Within hours, they were aboard a transport helicopter heading toward the coast. The wind was fierce, and the sound of the rotors filled the cabin. Turner sat across from Sarah, checking his gear silently. Sarah did the same, her hands steady, her face focused. When the helicopter neared the drop zone, Lawson's voice came through the radio. Remember, communication is everything. Trust your partner. That's an order. The team nodded, and within moments, they were jumping into the dark sea below. The water was freezing, but the adrenaline pushed them forward. They swam toward the faint outline of an island, rocky, isolated, and surrounded by crashing waves. Once they reached the shore, Turner signaled for silence. They moved carefully through the shadows, the only sounds being the ocean wind and the soft crunch of sand beneath their boots. After a few minutes, Sarah spotted something in the distance. Faint lights flickering from a small structure near the cliffs. There, she whispered, pointing. Turner looked, then nodded. That's our target. We move in from the east. They crawled along the ground, staying low. Every movement was calculated, every sound avoided. When they finally reached the edge of the cliff, they could see the smugglers' camp below. A handful of men guarding 3 frightened researchers. Turner assessed the scene quickly. 2 guards near the entrance, 1 by the generator, 2 inside. Sarah nodded. We can disable the generator first, that'll cut the lights. He glanced at her, the faintest hint of a smile crossing his face. Good thinking. Let's do it. They moved like shadows. Sarah approached the generator silently and used her knife to cut the wires. The camp went dark instantly. The guards shouted in confusion. Turner took down the first guard with a quick, quiet move. Sarah covered the other side, striking fast and clean. Everything happened in seconds. When the last guard fell, Turner signaled the all clear. They rushed to the small cage where the researchers were held. We're U.S. Navy, Sarah whispered. We're getting you out. The terrified men nodded quickly. Turner used a crowbar to break the lock, and one by one they pulled them out. Just as they were about to leave, a gunshot echoed through the night. One of the smugglers had woken up and was aiming straight at them. Down! Turner shouted, diving in front of Sarah. The bullet grazed his arm, but he stayed on his feet, returning fire with precision. Sarah helped pull him behind cover, checking his wound. It's just a scratch, he said through gritted teeth. Move! Together, they guided the researchers through the dark forest toward the extraction point. The smugglers chased them for a while, but the SEAL team had already radioed for backup. Within minutes, helicopters appeared overhead, shining bright lights that cut through the darkness. The rescue was successful. Everyone made it back safely. On the flight back, the team was exhausted but proud. Turner sat quietly beside Sarah, his arm bandaged. After a few minutes, he turned to her and said, You saved my life back there. She smiled faintly. You jumped in front of a bullet, so I'd say we're even. He chuckled softly. Fair enough. There was a pause, then he added, I used to think being a SEAL was about being the toughest. But you've shown me it's about something else, trust. You've got that in spades, Lieutenant. Sarah looked out the window, the early morning light glowing over the horizon. We all learned something, Chief, she said quietly. When they landed back at the base, Commander Lawson was waiting for them. He looked over the tired but victorious team with pride. Excellent work, he said. Then he turned to Sarah and Turner. Especially you two. You proved that respect isn't just earned in training. It's proven in the field. Turner straightened and saluted. Thank you, sir. Lawson nodded. You've come a long way, Chief. Both of you have. As the team walked away, Sarah felt something shift inside her. She wasn't just proud of completing the mission. She was proud of the journey that had brought her here. From the doubt, the confrontation, and the pain, something stronger had been built. Unity. That night, while sitting alone by the sea, she thought about everything they had gone through. The moonlight reflected off the waves, and the wind carried the faint sounds of laughter from the barracks behind her. She closed her eyes and smiled. For the first time, she didn't feel like she had to prove anything anymore. She was where she belonged. The commander's silent salute, Turner's respect, and the team's trust. It all meant one thing. She wasn't just in the Navy SEALs. She was part of them, and that made all the difference. Weeks passed after the rescue mission, but the memory of that night stayed fresh in everyone's mind. The base was quieter now, calmer. The team had grown stronger, closer, more unified than ever. Even the new recruits could feel the difference. They saw the way the SEALs worked together, how they respected each other without question. And at the center of that quiet strength was Lieutenant Sarah Miller. For Sarah, things had changed in ways she hadn't expected. She was no longer the outsider or the woman everyone doubted. She had become part of the heartbeat of the team, trusted, respected, and relied upon. But she didn't let it go to her head. Every morning, she still woke up before sunrise, ran along the beach, and pushed herself through the same tough training as everyone else. She believed respect wasn't something you won once. It was something you had to keep earning, every single day. One evening, Commander Lawson called her into his office. The door was half open, and the golden light from the setting sun spilled across his desk. When she stepped inside, he looked up with a faint smile. "Lieutenant Miller," he said, gesturing for her to sit. "You've done something remarkable here." Sarah sat down, straight-backed but curious. "Thank you, sir. I just did my job." Lawson shook his head. "You did more than that. You changed this place, the way people think, the way they lead." He leaned back in his chair. "When you first arrived, I'll admit I wasn't sure how things would go. You were strong, yes, but this environment is unforgiving. You didn't just survive it. You improved it." Sarah smiled softly. "It wasn't easy. It never is," Lawson said with a nod. "That's why it matters." He paused, then pulled out a small folder from his drawer. "I have orders from command. They've been watching your progress. You're being considered for a leadership position, training the next group of recruits." Sarah's eyes widened slightly. "Training the next SEALs?" Lawson smiled. "That's right. They want you to help shape the future, to teach them what you've learned, not just about tactics but about strength, respect, and what it really means to wear this uniform." For a long moment, Sarah didn't say anything. She looked down at the folder, then back at Lawson. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Lawson said simply. "You've earned it." Her voice was soft, but full of pride. "Yes, sir." He stood and extended his hand. "Congratulations, Lieutenant. You've done the Navy proud." As she shook his hand, she felt a wave of emotion. Pride, relief, and disbelief all at once. Every sacrifice, every hard day, every time she'd been told she didn't belong, it had all led to this moment. Outside the office, the sun was setting over the sea. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink. Sarah walked toward the docks, feeling the wind brush against her face. The world looked different now. Brighter, calmer, and somehow more alive. As she reached the pier, she saw someone already standing there, Chief Turner. He turned as she approached, his usual stern expression softened. "Commander told me the news," he said. "You're going to be training the next batch." Sarah smiled. "That's the plan." He nodded slowly. "They'll be lucky to have you." There was a long pause. The sound of waves filled the silence between them. "You know," Turner said after a moment, "I was wrong about you." Sarah looked at him curiously. "About me?" He nodded. "When you first got here, I thought you were trying to prove something, that you wanted to stand out. But now I see you just wanted to serve. You wanted to belong. And you do." Sarah smiled, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the setting sun. "Thank you, Chief. That means a lot." He looked out over the water, then added quietly, "You've made me rethink what leadership really means." For the first time since she'd met him, Sarah saw something new in Turner's expression, humility. respect, even friendship. As the evening deepened, the rest of the team gathered at the docks for a quiet dinner. Someone brought music, someone else started a small fire. Laughter filled the air, the kind of easy laughter that only comes from shared struggle and earned trust. Lawson joined them later, sitting beside Sarah and Turner. "You know," he said, watching the flames dance, "this team has been through more change in a few months than most do in years." Turner nodded. "Change isn't always easy, but sometimes it's exactly what we need." Sarah smiled. "As long as we remember what we stand for." Lawson raised his cup. "To the ones who remind us." They all lifted their cups, a silent toast under the stars. Later that night, when everyone else had gone back inside, Sarah stayed by the water a little longer. The moon was high, and its reflection shimmered across the sea. She took off her cap and held it over her chest, thinking of everything that had happened. The moments of doubt, the long nights, the silent salute that had changed everything. In the quiet, she whispered softly, "I did it, Dad." Her father had been a soldier too, one who'd never doubted her strength, even when the world did. She could almost hear his voice in the wind, proud, calm, and full of warmth. Tears filled her eyes, but they weren't from sadness. They were from peace. As she stood there, the night breeze carried the sound of waves and distant laughter from the base. She smiled through her tears and whispered again, "I belong here." The sea answered with a soft roar, as if agreeing. The next morning, she stood in front of a group of new recruits, nervous, hopeful, ready to begin their journey. Sarah looked at their faces and saw a reflection of who she once was. "Welcome to your new life," she said clearly. "This won't be easy, but if you have heart, courage, and respect for the person next to you, you'll make it through. Because being a SEAL isn't about being the strongest. It's about never giving up on yourself or your team." Her words hung in the air, powerful and true. The recruits stood straighter, inspired by the woman who had once been in their place. As Sarah turned toward the ocean one last time that morning, the sun rose over the horizon, golden, bright, and full of promise. The commander's silent salute had started it all. But now, Sarah Miller didn't need anyone to salute her. She had found her place, her purpose, and her peace. And the Navy SEALs would never be the same again.